Explain AI supply chain vulnerabilities to me like I'm a CTO who thinks that traditional third-party vendor risk management is pretty good.
If you bring in a model that could be affected through prompt injections, then you're bringing that risk to your customers and you don't even have that visibility.
What exactly breaks if the engineering or product security teams ignore this?
The developer have the ability to create our own environments, and those are not controlled by classic IT security.
What is the recommended way to pitch to a cybersecurity VC or angel investor?
What I recommend is know exactly what market that they're going into. I would examine their portfolio of what they've already invested in.
In 5 years, the biggest hidden cost of open source AI models in the enterprise, what do you see as the biggest cost? Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of Pitch Cafe podcast. This is a place where I bring trailblazers at the cutting edge of technology. I'm most fortunate to be in Silicon Valley and I am exposed to a pool of talent that is questioning the way things are. Today I'm so fortunate to be with a woman leader, a woman in STEM who is trailblazing in the field of cybersecurity for AI. It's not like we are flabbergasted, amazed by the changes in AI. The cybersecurity folks have to stay ahead of it because they are securing AI. And AI does not just mean the technology you see on your desktop at the edge on your phone, but it is the technology sitting behind the scenes in the enterprise space, in the supply chains, in the trenches. So we have with us Cassie Crossley, who is currently a startup founder and an angel investor. But this is a pivot from her career. She's had a phenomenal run as the vice president of supply chain security in global security and product security space at Schneider Electric. She's had a run of 15 years, so much so that she has accumulated enough knowledge to publish an O'Reilly book. It's no big, it's not a easy task to get eyeballs from O'Reilly. And her book is called Software Supply Chain Security. So we are working with a subject matter expert on our podcast today. Without further ado, let's bring on Cassie Crossley and learn about her latest gig and what she's most excited about. Cassie, welcome to Pitch Cafe podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Wonderful. Cassie, I can't help but admire your ability to execute things. We met at the GTM workshop and you had amazing insights on go-to-market for AI products. And you literally guided a cybersecurity founder who ran his idea. He's got customers, he's got early adopters, and you know exactly the mistakes he was making. So Cassie, tell us who you are and what brought you into the cybersecurity space. What's your story?
Yeah, well, the story actually goes back so many years. I worked in McAfee back in the mid-90s, which is a long time ago, long before it was called cybersecurity. But I had been in the technology world as a software developer, as a technical communication in many different roles, and then into project and program management. And as a program manager and director at Schneider Electric, they asked if I would help out in the CISO office doing program management for our Crown Jewels program and a lot of the policy and governance pieces of that. So I moved into about 9 years ago into a role in the IT security space, and I'd been both in R&D and IT. And in this world, it was a large company. It's now a 40 billion euro company, French multinational. So teams all around the world, 140,000 people. And so I had a lot of exposure to all of the different environments, into the different security platforms at that time. A lot of what people see are big names now were startups when we started working with them. Companies like SailPoint, Ping, Zscaler, SentinelOne. I mean, all of these companies were very small when we brought them into our organization. And then I pivoted over into our product security world, which is where I was one of the product security officers. And I love that because my background being in software development. And it just led to a couple different events where I ended up being a leader in software bill of materials, the SBOM movement, software supply chain security, and publishing the book with O'Reilly.
Wonderful. So let's start with the $1 million question. Explain AI supply chain vulnerabilities to me like I'm a CTO who thinks that traditional third-party vendor risk management is pretty good. Give one concrete example of how modern AI supply chain attack would completely bypass a vendor compliance model. So what exactly breaks if the engineering or product security teams ignore this?
Yeah. Great point. So I led and created the third-party risk management for our product security teams. And at that time, it was very much assessment-based, so on and so forth, but at the product level. So working with CTOs all around our organization. And when AI models were introduced, working with some of the startup companies around, they really have gone into very different areas. So we think about model security with AI, and I'll get to an example in a moment. And then you can think about the actual development infrastructure that people are using, both models to create their products, but also leveraging AI models in their products. So we have a couple different areas. So from an AI model standpoint, using reputable models is very important because at the beginning, especially, there were a lot of training issues and a lot of prompt injection issues where the models themselves could be easily compromised. There weren't the guardrails that there are now. And those models were starting to be used to build products. And Schneider Electric, we were a critical infrastructure company. So creating and thinking about what we term as safety, it wasn't just, from an AI risk standpoint and security, but it had the safety components too. And so if you bring in a model that could be affected through prompt injections, then you're bringing that risk to your customers and you don't even have that visibility. So it's extremely important from a product security standpoint. And then we are seeing every single day now with the developers themselves and the platforms they are using being subjugated to malicious threats, either through skills, through tools, through different areas, through packages, such as the Shai-Hulud NPM attack. And what that's doing is the developers were not, in most worlds, not watched at the same level you would watch your HR person or your finance person, because in a developer, we have the ability to create our own environments to do what we call spin up a machine. And those are not controlled by classic IT security. And so we have the ability to bring in everything that we want without any controls. And if developers are not aware of the security risks, they're bringing it to their corporate environments, and they can bring it into the products.
Yeah. So this is a great perspective on what's missing in today's day and age, especially in the enterprise AI space, because they're operating at such scale and their solutions are reaching the edge. So everyone is impacted by this. So before we get to your journey in supply chain, let's talk about your stint as an angel investor. What makes you a very competitive and compelling founder is you are also an angel investor and you look through a lot of pitch decks in cybersecurity. So tell us about your experience as an early stage advisor and investor. What is it that in this day and age you would invest in as an enterprise security startup, and what would the enterprise buyer actually pay for? Because you've been on both sides of the table. At Schneider Electric, you've seen companies getting acquired, and what kind of lens do you use as an angel investor and an enterprise buyer?
Yeah, and that is actually what prompted me and really why I want to do angel investing, because when I identified companies that were really at their startup and knew that they had a form, function, and fit that would work in our environment, that's a big deal. To be able to have the teams that could understand the enterprise risks, to have the teams that could build something that's scalable, to have the fortitude to be able to go beyond just the simple and really look at the complex architecture. So as an example, some of the early stages, as I mentioned, before even WannaCry happened, I asked the company that we were looking at that time, how could you have identified this and how early could you have identified? And they had data to show that they could have identified that malicious threat 8 months before. So and the same thing they pitched to me before they ever had even pitch deck. I heard about their product and I saw, and that's what I look for is, could I bring this into my organization? Could I deploy it? I ask about the deployment model. I ask about, how it specifically works. And if a company can go through the pains that it takes to get into an infrastructure that is heavily controlled and be able to adapt, it's very important. One of the companies that I advise for, and I'm on the public board for, I was their first customer because I had envisioned this SBOM management tool and was seeking folks. And I gave them a hard task at the beginning is, I'm not going to use a SaaS platform. I need it to be on essentially in our own private cloud. And so they had to make those modifications. So it really is important. If I am talking to a founder and all they ask is, tell me your problems. What are you experiencing? I know that they're just following maybe a certain accelerator's playbook of how to get in, but they really don't understand the problems. The founders that I'm seeing that have been really successful have been in some enterprise environments. They understand that you could have 87 ERPs in a company at some point. They understand that integrations take months and maybe even a year to go through all the different controls. So they are there and can live through that with you. And so what I'm also looking for in addition to that is making sure that they understand that they will have to adjust and adapt as they go along. So being a design partner as part of that, where you're making suggestions, and then I watch and see if any of those suggestions are implemented as we go along. And if they aren't, then I don't feel like they're truly listening. And I usually don't stay on as a design partner. So I look for that same thing in startups, and the startups that I've advised over time, they've really grown into where there's exits. And that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to be an angel investor, because I did not do that while I was at Schneider, because I wanted to make sure not to have a conflict of interest.
Yeah. So I can't ignore the elephant in the room, your book. This software supply chain security, securing the end-to-end supply chain for software, firmware, and hardware. AI supply chain has become an entire vertical, hard to ignore. Some of the smartest angel investors I have worked with who moved on from corporate venture capital. I've had a close association with them. They worked at NEC and such. They are moving into AI supply chain, and they did so back in the pandemic days. So they saw a huge market opening up. Tell us about your book and tell us about all the enterprise leaders you spoke to who've contributed to the book. What's the book about?
Yeah. So the book came about because during the pandemic, I was part of, and even before then, the Purple Book community, which is sponsored by Armor Code. And I had met DeKel at an event. And so I was a design partner as they were starting to build that product and that solution. And as we went about, they said they wanted to bring together app leaders, because I had told them, I said, there's not a community for product security leaders for us to discuss the issues that I'm running into. And at that time, it had been things like the California IoT connected device law. There were other things, both hardware and software related. And so they brought together this Purple Book community, and one of the editors, and they first asked me to do a process chapter because I did a lot of secure development lifecycle. And I said, say, can I do one on software supply chain security? And this was before SolarWinds. So I actually wrote the whole chapter about how to secure the development infrastructure. And after SolarWinds, before we released the book, they brought in an editor who introduced me to O'Reilly. And what I found very important when working with O'Reilly and just in the world that I was in and still am in is embedded security. It doesn't have the same sort of, let's just say, the way life works happens at a different pace and a different way when you're dealing with chipsets and that level of security on critical infrastructure. And what that means is you're dependent on somebody else to do the work. So we see a lot in the CISA known exploitable vulnerabilities list. Like right now, there's an exploit for Fortinet, and there is a lot of Avanti and a lot of other products. So you don't hear that as much on the cloud infrastructure, except when it goes down, like a CrowdStrike or something of that event. Because in this world, there was a lot of work being done behind the scenes, and this community that we're part of is also, from the book standpoint, what it's really given me is I have friends and peers and colleagues all around the world globally in the product security and application security space. And I would say probably half of them focus on cloud structure and that level. And then the other half are us on the critical infrastructure and embedded devices side, which now that AI is so dependent on data centers and bare metal and everything and the chipsets, it's coming back more into fashion where you really need to understand that hardware security side.
Yeah. What are some of the things people are not prepared in terms of the hardware security side, the infrastructure part of the security side, like which you cover in the book, which we could, kind of explore through the book?
Well, part of it is I don't think most people realize the risk in the supply chain before even the chip is manufactured. You could be dealing with contract manufacturers. There could be engineering drawings. There could be all sorts of risks at that level. But then you're dependent on, for example, if you are using Intel chips or NVIDIA chips, they actually have their own software teams to create the drivers and everything necessary for it. And if you don't have that information or understand those risks, you're not going to be ready. One of the first major hardware chip kind of evolved security risks was Heartbleed. That was many years back. So it was really great. I met part of the NVIDIA team that focuses on application security and vulnerability management at an event. And the work that all of them are doing, in addition to globally, it's very important. But for those that are consuming that, not understanding the risks that they're running into, you're missing such a big part of it. So let's say you're building a device and you're using their chips. You really need to understand their security profile and understand how they are building it. And that's key.
Yeah, wonderful. That's a great segue into the content of the book. But before that, let's talk about the high stakes leadership, the physical and digital bridge here when we deal with negotiations in the cybersecurity acquisition or partnership or contracts which you sign. Walk us through a hard boundary you had to draw in enterprise negotiations at your scale at Schneider. And also now as a startup founder, you will probably get into that phase of your startup growth. What is the non-negotiable term around software provenance, SBOM transparency, or a third-party AI liability that makes you walk away from a vendor negotiation or a partnership or deal? Or do you say no to a negotiation or a contract, even though the technology may be very impressive? Something for the CISOs or the CIOs to think about.
Recent example is when you are talking transparency. For example, right now, the AI bill of materials there's standards for that, but it's still growing. In fact, there was a recent release, suggested information. So when I'm doing negotiations at an enterprise scale with a vendor, it's not necessarily the ability to be perfect, but the ability to at least give that information. For example, vulnerability management. Like if they cannot commit to an SLA or some process and provide evidence of that, then that's that's something to walk away from. I was at an event and someone presented on their AI SOC initiative that they were deploying. And they said that they had gotten requests and bids from 3 vendors. One of them would not provide any transparency information. They wouldn't give the details about who the developers were. They wouldn't give a software bill of materials. And they said that's a deal breaker for us. And I think that most of us now, we want to know that information. What are you doing with your models? Who's creating it? What are you using? Give us a software bill of materials. Tell us the details in an AI bill of materials. And those are deal breakers. And that was the deal breaker for me even years ago, but now even more so, because you do not know how things are being built. And we know that they're rapidly changing. Like, I should be able to go to a vendor and say, by next week, in the next 72 hours, I would like an updated bill of materials and understand the transparency, because I'm licensing and purchasing your product. I have that right. It should not be secret.
Yeah. Wow. This is a great insight for early stage startup founders, because I go to these pitch events and I work with founders so closely. When I share their decks with the VCs as a scout, sometimes, wow, they're not revealing the details fully. And this is a great insight. So what is the recommended way to pitch to a cybersecurity VC or angel investor? What are some of the, let's say, 3 things you want to do, absolutely want to do, to get a buy-in from a cybersecurity investor?
Yeah. Well, what I recommend is, first off, know exactly what markets that they're going into. I would examine their portfolio of what they've already invested in. So, for example, if they are focused on more AI agentic pieces, really create something unique for them to say, here's how we fit in with your current portfolio. What I hear most from VCs is, I already have something like that in my portfolio, so I can't take this on. And they don't want to waste their time. So you have to show where you can align to their current portfolios before anything else. And then by looking at their portfolio, you can also see, are they interested in early exits? What are they looking for? So if most of their products were acquired or exited through, for example, purchases with Palo Alto or something, that, explain what is a potential exit strategy for this. Is it merging with another company? Is it filling in a gap in other portfolios? Because what usually founders are so focused on, here's me, and not what, from a VC standpoint, what can I bring to your portfolio and how can I help you? Would I be able to enhance what you've got? And I think that's very important.
So, Cassie, is this the right time for you to talk about your own startup, Vulno? It sounds like it's something to do with vulnerabilities, considering your expertise. But is this something you want to share on this podcast?
Yeah. So I was approached by what is now my co-founder, the CTO, and he had developed a predictive model that can identify vulnerabilities that open source maintainers had fixed and never disclosed. So just picture John, the open source maintainer, sitting in his basement every weekend, writing and updating code for this open source project that's used by tons and tons of people around the world in their corporate software or whatever. But John fixes security bugs because he's a good guy, but he never discloses that he's made that fix. Yeah. And we can identify that and be able to say, here's how many versions back this vulnerability existed in. We determine if it's exploitable, because that's a major portion of today's world. If it's a low risk fix, it doesn't matter. We can determine breaking changes. So we give that signal to folks in the app world and the SecOps world and the cloud world and red teaming, so that they can see what has been fixed. And we also are going to be able to disclose those vulnerabilities on behalf of John, because John doesn't like to do the paperwork.
Yeah, wonderful. I was reading about Mythos a couple of months ago, and you're kind of aligned with what Mythos is capable of doing. So maybe you work with them, or if Mythos is banned, then you're a good person to be in business with, right?
Yes, yes. And what's interesting is we have one we saw an open source maintainer had fixed something that Mythos, another research company, had found, but he never disclosed that either. So Mythos and the other tools are producing fixes for vulnerabilities, but the open source maintainers are not disclosing those, and that's what our signal provides.
Wonderful. So, Cassie, as we close the podcast, a few rapid fire questions for you. What is the single most overrated cybersecurity buzzword you're seeing in vendor pitch decks right now?
I think we actually can control your agents or have that visibility. It's very difficult at this point. I know there are hundreds of AI companies, so I need more specifics, like in what area, and show me practical areas where you are actually preventing security issues. And that's what I want to see.
Yeah, wonderful. A brilliant engineer graduating today, should they go build the next generative AI tool or go deep into securing physical infrastructure and software supply chains? Is this something they should be thinking about?
Yeah, we are in desperate need of more people to work on the cyber physical. And it doesn't even have to be critical infrastructure. Robots are cyber physical and they're cool, right?
Yes.
So there are lots of interesting technologies that are still working in that cyber physical sense.
Wonderful. And what's the one piece of unvarnished advice you'd give to women stepping into deeply technical, high stakes cybersecurity or product security roles today?
Well, I think that a lot of the women and female leaders, they might come up the GRC route, the governance, risk, and compliant, and other route, or it may been a while and they say, "Oh, I'm not technical," and I just want people to stop saying that. It doesn't take much to, especially in today's world with Notebook LM and other things, to be able to uplift your technical skills and to learn new areas. And so I highly encourage you to stay technical, create agents, build your own stuff. You can create your own lab with a mini PC or a cloud, virtual private cloud. So practice and get your hands dirty with that. And it's fun. So that's what I recommend is just don't say you're not technical.
I love that advice. I'm going to take that one to heart. I haven't ventured beyond prompts, advanced prompt engineering, but I think I'll start working with codecs and things like that. So in 5 years, the biggest hidden cost of open source AI models in the enterprise, what do you see as the biggest cost?
Well, I think that overall, a lot of people are going to a hybrid standpoint. So I think the costs will go down. It's if they need the advanced tokens for AI. So for example, in an enterprise, I hear and know that there are people who are having to reduce their token costs and spend because at an enterprise, they're saying, oh, you must use Codex or you must use Claude, and that gets very expensive. So as models, and especially open source models, people can move to a hybrid approach to say, this kind of work does not require the most advanced model. But I definitely see that AI tokens and the investment that people are having to do are going way up. And so they need to control some of those costs.
Wonderful. And the best career decision you made that your peers told, it was a big mistake?
Yeah. So the best career decision that I made, is not necessarily that a peer told me not to make, is I asked a mentor, I wanted to be a CIO at one point. She goes, don't do that. Go into the business. So actually, that's what I did. I focused a lot on my technology side, but leading P&Ls, program management offices. But from a approach standpoint, I guess I had always thought I was going to be a developer. And it turns out that I don't like to sit in a quiet environment for 12 hours. I want to work with people. So it's more about listening and knowing who you are to say, this is best work for me. And that's where I excelled on that project and program management. So it's not as much as people telling me, don't do this or you shouldn't do this, and I surpassed. It was more about listening to especially the mentors in my life about where I needed to go from a direction.
Wonderful. So, Cassie, thank you so much for the past half hour you spent with us. I think you'd be an excellent advisor to startups, a great angel investor because you're a partner in building journeys. I can tell from your experience, and I think you'd be a fantastic founder. What is the best way for people to reach out to you, and what are some of the cold emails or messages that you find hard to ignore? You love them when people reach out to you in a certain way.
Yeah. Well, LinkedIn is probably one of the easiest. I'm an easy to find with my name. And I actually have booked an appointment on my LinkedIn at this moment. So you can schedule something. What I really appreciate is when people say why they want to meet with me and what they hope to get out of it. Because sometimes I'm not the right fit, but I can recommend someone for them to talk to that's a better fit. And, but I do not like I want to hear your thoughts with that I mentioned earlier. If it's just a general get to know you, I like to help. I know other VCs like to help provide that feedback. So that's where I want to be able to spend some time. And sometimes, there's not a partnership that can be developed or it's a one-time thing, but I'm definitely always happy to hear from folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be an incredible mentor. I mean, I can't thank my stars enough that I ran into you. I definitely want to host a workshop with you, whether it's in cybersecurity or, AI startup go-to-market workshop. Your insights are incredible. And thank you so much for your time. And love to have you back again and check in on your startup.
Right, right. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful.
Wonderful. Thanks.